he's a big boy. You might get 6 hours here. And I thought to myself, oh, my God, 6 hours, I'm going to be exhausted. So I set my alarm for 6 hours and he woke every 45 minutes. And that was probably a very rude awakening.
Hi everyone and welcome back to No Place Like Home. I am your host Larissa and today we are joined by Kath. Kath has co-hosted with me before, but today we're going to get to know you a little more intimately.
Thanks.
All good.
Nice to be here.
Let's talk about you a little bit. Maybe just a bit about yourself, your background, quals, family, work, all the things.
Okay, cool. So you already all know this. You know this anyway.
Well, I do after knowing you for 13 years.
Yeah. So my background is that I'm a registered nurse. I have varied experience actually.
You do.
Regional Victoria was kind of where I cut my teeth. So spent the first handful of years in my nursing in Ballarat, which was amazing. Being regional, very diverse, and really just got to see a lot more than probably most people do in the city to start with. So spent a few years there, did some extra studies and decided to do a bit of travel, so went over to London. And whilst I very patiently waited for my nursing registration over there because it's a bit of a saga to get it.
Oh, okay.
I did lots of other things that were interesting, but
we won't go into.
And was finally able to do some nursing. So largely my nursing has been in theatre.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So across anaesthetics, recovery and scrub scout on the floor. Sort of literally arms in bodies.
My goodness me.
And absolutely loved that. Did lots of that throughout all of my journey in my nursing. So after being in London for just over 2 years, came back to Melbourne, did a little bit more study and sort of worked in between Ballarat and through Melbourne. Lots of women's health through theatre as well.
Right.
And really was thriving on that. But in there somewhere realised when I met my husband, if I ever wanted to see him during daylight hours, this wasn't really conducive to that.
Yeah.
So I spent 7.5 years at a private health insurer and worked on a clinical consulting team there, which was, helped me understand business really.
Yeah.
So getting to know the ins and outs of hospitals that I didn't understand prior to that and just the whys.
Added from a different perspective. Yeah.
In that time, then had 3 children, not at once, over a few years. So I have a son who's 8 and 2 daughters who are 6 and 4. So
it's a nice,
that's
a nice little mix. And we love the boss, the littlest one.
Oh, yep, she
love it. Always
she
hear her in the background. Yeah, she's just a riot. We love her.
Yeah.
Okay, so lots of variety, but sort of within that, still that healthcare system.
Very much. I'm so incredibly passionate about probably more wellness than healthcare. I really, unfortunately, have seen some parts of the healthcare system that are not my favourite.
Yes.
Up until, working for a private health insurer for 7.5 years was quite intense, seeing things from the other side and unfortunately understanding the no of a lot of the questions that we were hearing in hospitals, which was quite confronting, particularly when things were brought to you that were really quite emotive And, you know, you have to understand the business behind why these decisions are made, which, you know, it has absolutely set me up for, you know, what I do in my everyday now. It's not the greatest part of my job, feeling that sometimes I do have to say no, but giving the understanding behind, you know, even though healthcare is care, it's still a business, and that is, you know, sometimes there's a no that sits behind that, so
that would be hard.
And for me, I was ready to step away from it when the time came. So that happened 2.5 years ago for me, stepping away from that actual healthcare system.
More that corporate side.
Yeah. And I think it allowed me to really refocus then on what am I actually passionate about here, because, you know, I really want to focus on some really good wellness outcomes for people. And in order to do that, I need to maybe try and prioritise what that looks like. And
because in amongst that, you are also a Pilates.
I am a Pilates instructor as well, yes. Yeah, so that's when that came in for me. Pilates for me was really a glue. I was very passionate about it whilst I was studying it, and things just made sense to me. And having a healthcare background and understanding anatomy and, you know, actually being able to see what that looks like for people and how Pilates can be used as recovery, you know, like as a basis really. Not just a form of exercise and general well-being, but you moved into a bit of that recovery space, didn't you? And like amazing to be able to do that. And I think for me, I started to pivot on that a little bit with, okay, how can I do this in a place that I really want to do it? And it started very small, and that was kind of like what allowed me to start to make a turning point there. But I certainly used Pilates for myself in my own recovery, both physical and mentally, certainly in my postpartums. And then so sort of lent on that as a bit of a crux when I was like, okay, I think I can do very similar for some people.
Yeah.
And I don't have to take it from the angle of, you know, this is actually what we're doing, although sometimes I do that, certainly with people that we care for now. But yeah, to sort of have that in the back of my mind that actually when we move our bodies and when we invest a little bit in ourselves in a physical way, there's so many benefits that come out of that. So
just tell us a bit about what you do at home, what your role is. So I think it's just a really nice connector for people to understand why you're our director of ops.
Yeah, so if you've ever stayed at home and you happen to be listening today, I would have definitely met you, whether it be on the phone. Generally, I've met most, I would say 99% of the people who have come through. Director of operations at home, which is a dream job to me. It allows me to sort of put all of my experience into one. And I'm pretty sure you and I would both say this pivots quite a lot. So being able to have that healthcare lens and to be able to look at the greater picture for our guests that are coming in, to sort of be able to make those connections with externals, to be able to understand what people need when they're going home or how they're coming in and what the supports look like. It's a huge part of what's important to us at home. We only hold them for a period of time. So knowing what they go home with is incredibly important.
I think it's been beneficial for us as well as an organisation, because it's also allowed us to know what to focus time on and what not to. So I know certainly for myself starting this, I was like, we're going to bash down this door of private health insurance and Medicare, and this is going to happen. And don't get me wrong, we still are, but with the benefit of your experience working within a private health insurer, there's things where you've just flatly said, it's not going to happen. Like,
don't
There's
focus.
a wait. Yeah. Don't focus your time there.
Yeah.
That's going to be a year's in the making kind of thing. And so what that's enabled us to do as an organisation is go, okay, well, can we work around it? Like, how do we benefit from the system now for our guests? And let's actually spend our time and energy there instead of just make postpartum greater in your private health insurance options, because they're just going to, at the moment, just flatline it. So
much of that. And I think with private health, obviously that's something that we would love to be able to facilitate in some stage. But I think that is also a barrier at times as well.
Yeah.
Certainly, like, we are for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's about focusing on what's important, and the whole journey is important as far as we're concerned. And I feel that our team in general is so diverse, and I certainly lean on every single one of them. I am not a postpartum specialist, but I am absolutely a broadened specialist in what I do, and I really lean on our team for, to be able to orchestrate things on the floor. And, my job is very much in the background. Which I love.
We're going to talk more about private health insurance, cost of postpartum care in the next episode. So we'll certainly get back on that one. So to go back to you, at what point were you nursing when you decided that you wanted to have children?
Yes. Yeah. So at that stage, I had moved over to the private health insurer. So I was living the cruisy life, I like to say. Well, I was working a 9 to 5.
Yeah, compared to nursing. Yeah.
I say I was working a 9 to 5, but I was also working at a private hospital 3 nights a week, and sometimes on the weekend.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
I just could not separate. Once it runs through your veins, I still do miss it now. It's just not practical for me to do, to be on the floor doing that.
Yeah.
I'm very passionate about it, but my passion has swung to be able to do this in another way. Yeah. So, yes, first time round I was working 2 jobs. Because I loved it.
I remember that now, yeah.
And I did that up until 35 weeks, and then I thought, okay, I'll just work full-time now.
Okay. Yep. I'll just
work full time now. So my first pregnancy was really straightforward. Felt really well.
Clearly working 2 jobs.
Yeah, I was relatively active, and just kind of enjoyed it. I kind of immersed myself in whatever that looked like. Felt like maybe I have a little bit of an idea about, what postpartum. Actually, I'm not even sure that I focused on postpartum at all at that point.
Okay. Yeah.
I did what people say to do, and I filled my fridge, and I nested all around my house, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. Okay.
For me, my whole pregnancy, my son was very big. I didn't know he was a boy at that point, but he throughout every scan, I was getting, look, give or minus 10%, plus or minus 10%, Bub's looking big. So we had already started to talk about what that might look like. Yeah. My preference was always, I'd like to have a vaginal birth. Let's see how that goes.
Yep.
And so we started to make plans towards what that would look like. And to be honest, I completely trusted my obstetrician. I had a really good relationship with her from working with her in hospitals on the floors, and I knew that she had an incredible manner.
Okay.
And she was just practical and calm, and that is exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Equally, she spoke to my husband, who, as you know, is a builder, and spoke to him like a builder, and he got it.
He would have loved that.
I think for me, it was very cruisy. We started to talk about induction, and I was very open to that idea. And that's what we did.
Yeah.
An induction.
Yeah.
The birth itself was fine. It was sort of after that point that I started to go, wow, I just have no idea. And was very rudely awoken to that quite quickly. I very vividly remember, having the rush of all the adrenaline and hormones going through my body and having fed, changed, wrapped my baby in some manner, and then calling the midwife and saying, what do I do now? And she said, go to sleep. And I went, okay. And she said, look, he's a big boy. You might get 6 hours here. And I thought to myself, oh my God, 6 hours, I'm going to be exhausted. So I set my alarm for 6 hours and he woke every 45 minutes. And that was probably a very rude awakening. At that point, I was like, honestly, I think it was like the third or fourth time I called them in. I said, he's broken. You said he would sleep for 6 hours. There's something wrong here. And they said, oh no, this is him trying to bring in your milk. And I went, oh, okay, is there any other way? And I'm healthcare. I'd worked in healthcare for quite some time.
Did you feel like that was a weight for you? Like that expectation of I work in healthcare, I'm a nurse.
Oh, honestly, I don't think I did at that point.
Yeah.
I was in survival mode, but I was absolutely immersed in it. First time round, I was like, whatever this means. Sometimes it's hard. Like some of my really good girlfriends who saw me go through that, they laugh now because they I will say things like, yeah, because my kids just never slept. And they're like, well, Jude in particular, there was stories about him that I would be in, our mother's group catch-ups just going, he's just not even tired. And they're like, he's not even blinking. He's so tired, it's not even funny. But I had no idea. And I was blissfully unaware, and that was okay. He was my job to keep alive, and I was obsessed. So first time around for me, I was incredibly sleep deprived and really immersed myself in what that was. I had a beautiful group of girlfriends that we were all in the same boat, and, it didn't feel as lonely as other times. So I was very lucky in that way.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that first time around.
Your first postpartum
it was okay.
It was okay.
Yeah.
Second? I only say that
Enter Winnie.
I know the pain.
Yeah. So first time for me obviously was very different to second time around. Situationally for me, there was a lot going on. We were going through a lot of stuff in our own personal lives as well. We were renovating a house and living with my parents, which was, I feel more common than I realised at the time.
Yeah.
Certainly from talking to people that come and stay with us and they fall into similar situations.
Yeah.
So I kind of started in quite an anxious state already. Throughout my entire pregnancy, I would say I was incredibly anxious and was just fretting to get home. I just so desperately wanted things to look like, a little boxed up picture of, okay, well, it doesn't matter if we haven't finished the house, that's okay. I just need to get home. I just need to be in my own space.
Do you think you were trying to consciously or otherwise mimic that first environment of your first pregnancy? Because you felt like that was kind of quite... you knew it and it felt good for you. So you were like, okay, I just need to mimic that and this is not mimicking it.
So potentially, yes. Yeah. I think I'm quite a homebody, really. I really like my things to be in places. Sam, my husband, will absolutely attest to this.
Yeah.
So will my kids.
Yeah.
And Jude, my son, was such a chiller. He wasn't 2 yet throughout this pregnancy, and he was my right-hand man. Everything I did, he did too, and we were very close. So, moving into what was now chaotic, and we were running on, in somebody else's space. I'm very close with my mum and dad, and I really appreciated being able to stay with them, but it wasn't my comfort.
Yeah.
It wasn't my space.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I kicked off that pregnancy. And then my obstetrician was very much watching me throughout. And
Same obstetrician?
Same obstetrician, yes. I love her dearly. I will not have another child, but
Yeah.
I will always keep her dear to my heart because she's very special to me. But I certainly thought to myself, this is a lot. So at that time, Sam was working a full-time job, leaving my mum and dad's who lived 30 minutes from where we had our house.
Yeah.
And he would be gone for 16 hours a day, sometimes more. And so it became even more just Jude and I. So, and that was okay. But because he had a job to do and we were very focused. But my obstetrician started to say to me, if we actually want Sam there, perhaps we better plan for that. The induction went well for you first time. Would you like to do that? And my anxiety was so high about the fact that maybe he may not be. That's what we went for second time round. So, again, birth for me was great.
Fairly straightforward.
Yeah, great. But, yeah, it kind of hit pretty quickly. So, yeah.
We can, so there's still some big things around this postpartum for you that we may touch on and we may not.
Yeah. So, there's lots of scabs for me, certainly like working in this field as well. It is so... it happens on the regular for absolutely all of us, I would say, that work in this field that are triggered by something. There's something that's a little bit familiar. There's something that feels the same.
Yes.
And that's okay. Just sometimes I'm not quite ready to go there yet.
Yeah.
And
we don't have to with the second postpartum.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy to talk about parts of that for me because I think it's important for me to talk about why this is so important to me and this, making sure that people value what postpartum looks like.
Yeah.
And a healthcare system that is really broken because for me, and I know parts of this are similar for you, there were lots of alarm bells going for medical professionals that I was dealing with but nobody really pushed anything with me. Yeah. So, it was tricky. Winnie, who's my middle child, was absolutely incredible. I was just already partially broken when she arrived, and that was where we started, really. Yeah. So it wasn't as easy.
Yeah. And we know that the predisposition to have mental health challenges prior and during pregnancy, you're at a much higher risk of it forming into something more in postpartum.
Yeah. And again, something I know now, something I didn't know then.
Yeah.
And when words like anxiety started to come about, I talk about my, pregnancy as being quite an anxious period of time. At that time, I wasn't looking at myself going, wow, I've got anxiety. I was just get it done.
Yes.
Do life right now, and that's, get through it. Yeah. And, that's just how we'll go. We'll just keep looking straight ahead and hope that, we have some wins along the way.
And you still do that now.
Yeah, I do. I do.
Still do that now.
Yeah.
But I think you probably do it now with a greater awareness of what resources you need. Yeah. And asking for that help, or Riss, I'm MIA today, right? We're not doing this.
She's tapping out.
Yeah. We're not doing this in this household.
Yeah.
A third postpartum with Boss Lady?
So I think if I just close out on
postpartum. Yeah.
That was that was really challenging for me on so many different levels. Lots of my family and friends watched on just going, I don't know what's going on here. Like sleep was certainly a big thing. I wasn't in my own environment, not until Winnie was, 4.5 months. And then I just brought in all the big guns.
And interestingly, there could be a perception of thought that you were living in your parents' place, so there's more hands, more support. So I just, for those people listening that think, yeah, but, you know, the more support people have there and like sometimes it doesn't matter.
Oh, I could have had a million people around me and I really do think it would have been the same circumstances.
Yeah.
I did not have a will to change my environment that was going on. My parents were incredibly supportive. Like I'd be like bouncing up and down, cuddling Winnie, who'd be screaming because she had reflux and really slept on me for the first certainly 6 months and like desperate to just feel some reprieve. And then Mum would tap in and out because like Sam couldn't be there. But he would get home and I would pass him a screaming baby and he would then do laps up and down the street, or sometimes he would just say, I can't tonight. And we really were ships in the night at that point. It was just both in survival mode at that point. But I guess we moved through that. We moved back into the house. We had other focuses, which were, okay, we got to get on with this. I went back to work quite early with her. And I think on reflection, that was so that I could have some control of something. At the time, it was just convenient. That's what happened. So I went back to work when she was 7 months old and I worked from home with her for a period of time. And things definitely got easier in time, but there was a hangover from that, and it lasted with me.
Absolutely.
And then, boss baby pregnancy.
We call it, if anyone has if anyone can experience little Miss Indy, she is just like life in a bottle.
She is.
But she tells you.
She does. She does.
Love it.
And so for me, that was a COVID pregnancy. So I found out I was pregnant and 2 weeks later we went into lockdown. Nobody obviously knew what that looked like at that point. But to be honest, I quite liked it. I was a sicko that didn't mind that. I was like, okay, I'm just going to really hibernate my best life. And I had 2 little kids at home and, you know, they weren't going, I was lucky enough that I didn't have to go through homeschooling.
They weren't school age,
I mean, Jude was in 3-year-old kinder and they did online classes, but I didn't.
My gosh.
He was living, you know, the life that he needed to live. And I think our kids would probably fondly remember parts of COVID. We were there and, you know, it was one-on-one time really. There was absolutely challenges about that. But as far as the way I felt through that pregnancy compared to previous, like I would say I absolutely fell into that. I'm just going to do what my body needs me to do. So I was napping on the couch with the kids all over me and, you know, going really quite slowly with work and just immersing myself in whatever that looked like because she couldn't do anything anyway. So no one was expecting me to be anywhere or do anything. And my outing for, you know, at that point, because I had been seeing my obstetrician, like I had a previous relationship with her, I was seeing her fortnightly basically from kick-off. I had that pre-existing relationship, but also she read the play previously and wanted to keep me tight. So I got every 2 weeks off I went. Had a nice little chat and got to see Bubs and, that pregnancy was pretty good. And, ended up again in we can definitely go naturally here, but we were still in lockdown at that point. This is end of October, towards the end of October. We were very nearly coming out of it. And so again, just as my history had been, did I want to go induction or did I want a natural birth? Well, I'd known 2 awesome inductions, so I did the same. And I would say I kind of enjoyed the time just being slow.
Yeah.
Went home early from hospital because I missed the kids so much. And, I really just fell back into my bubble, if I'm being honest. Like just...
Which is kind of an ideal environment.
Yeah. And look, there was...
If you were that mindset of like, I just want to be home in my cocoon.
Yeah.
You kind of were given that time back to not have to do the rat race of life.
Absolutely. Because you do, like... From everything we know, particularly about postpartum, it's actually like the ideal circumstance. No one comes to see you. No one needs to be in your bubble necessarily. My mum and mother-in-law were able to come in with doctor's letters until the end. I think it was November. It finished the lockdown, but. For me that was, okay, that's cool. I'm not expected to just bounce back.
Yes.
I can just really sit in this. And I remember at the time talking to like midwives and maternal health nurses and just they were sort of saying like, this is our ideal. Like, you know, people are feeding much better. They're breastfeeding for longer. They're, you know, able to invest in that. And that was kind of my focus at the time. I really just thought I'm just going to be here. Probably a little bit too much. And into partway through my postpartum really started to feel like, you know, as things changed with COVID and you were able to get out and about, I didn't want to. And there was a level of anxiety that sat around, now I have to socialise. I can't. Yeah. I don't know how. And I remember like feeling like at that point, I knew that I needed to work in the postpartum field and felt really, really strongly about it. Was trying to work out how I would make that happen. So I was talking to lots of different people about it. You were one of them as well. We were having lots of chats. And I remember talking to my hairdresser at the time about how I was like, you know, this is what I want to do and I got to work out how one day I'm going to get in there, but, you know, that I need to make a difference somewhere. It's like I feel really passionate about it. And she said to me, you should come to this Business Chicks Awards thing that I'm running. And I went, oh, okay. And she said, you can bring a friend. So I was like, all right, can I bring my kids? Because I don't know that I'll be able to get them looked after. And she said, yeah, absolutely. So I really revved myself up. This was like a proper outing. And I remember like having to look myself in the mirror and say like, that's it, we're going. I've got to go. And Indy would have been probably 5 months old at this point. And my girlfriend picked me up. We went together. We took, I took Winnie and Indy with me. And I remember turning up and just like going blank. I had no thoughts in my head. I was just like, I felt like my whole body was on fire. I was like, wow, how am I even going to do anything? Like, and I remember walking in and like the person at the desk whom I knew said to me, just tell me what your name is. And I went, I don't know. And like after kind of standing there having no idea what I was doing there and like what that was, my girlfriend sort of picked up that, something's happening here. Yeah. Told them my name and said, and we're just going to walk this way, and walked me into the room, sat me down and was like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah. And we sat there for probably half an hour. And then she was like, we're tapping out. Let's go. So, like, after that, like, I couldn't tell you who spoke. I couldn't tell you what happened. I just know at that point it was so incredibly overwhelming. And it was like, I'd just, like, stepped out. Your body
just went into freeze mode.
Absolutely. Like, not even fight or flight. Like, I was just like, I'm paralysed. I don't actually know how to action this. And so then I was petrified to go out anywhere. I was like, no, I don't need to go out. I remember the Builders Awards that came up later in that year, and I remember I was linked with the psych, but at that stage I was...
You're still so...
Yeah. And I didn't know what I was working through, to be honest. Yeah. And I remember her saying to me, it would be good for you to go to the Builders Awards. Like, that would be a really good thing to do. And I was like, I don't even know how to get there. I can't go. and it was
Yeah, I remember that night.
Yeah, it was probably a very dark place for me. I'm social, but I'm not extroverted, so like being at home I'm very happy with, but like I also like to get fancy, so so that was just really not characteristic for me, and that probably took me a good 6 months, if not more, to really work through that. So that was that a trigger for me from postpartum, or was that an accumulation of COVID just ruining things for lots of different people? But that was my third postpartum, so
quite the variety. Quite the variety. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We are going to chat. I usually finish this sort of episode off with a question, but I think it's poignant to ask you that question.
Okay.
Starting off in the next one. Thanks again, Kath, for sharing your journey. And yes, if you have the opportunity to stay with us, Kath will certainly be one of the, if not the first person that you will have the privilege to speak to. So, we love you very much.
Thank you.
And we will chat again soon.
Thank you.
This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guest speakers. Views and opinions expressed in the podcast are our own and do not represent that of our places of work. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and content here should not be taken as medical or professional advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any personal recommendations and medical care. While we make every effort to ensure that the information we are sharing is accurate based on the best available information at the time of recording, we welcome any comments, suggestions or feedback via our website contact form, home.com.au/contact. Names and details of personal experiences may have been changed to allow for anonymity and privacy. To join the conversation, join us on social media at Home Postpartum.